yesterday, I mean, Obama's foreign policy, which was based on the idea that America shouldn't be a leader, that we should get out of the Middle East, that the Middle East really was an anti-Israeli policy as well, was a total disaster. He mishandled Iraq when he pulled out of Iraq too soon, let ISIS spread, didn't do anything about ISIS, didn't do anything about the Syrian civil war, and then said in Syria, oh, it's okay because the Russians are taking care of it, and the Russians have negotiated to get rid of all the chemical weapons. Not so much. The chemical weapons are still there. Remember, that was the red line. Then he made this deal with Iran. And this thing, I mean, the Israelis have been complaining about this forever. But I want you to remember the Iran deal. Benjamin Netanyahu came out yesterday with his big production number because Trump has set May 12th as the deadline on whether he's going to pull out of the Iran deal, which he has criticized a lot. And the Europeans are trying to get him to stay. And Netanyahu has hated this thing from the beginning. And Netanyahu comes out and he gives this incredible presentation. Now, before I just show you some of this, I want you to remember that the deal was based on the idea that they had not been developing nuclear weapons. They were supposed to come clean about their program before the deal was in place. It was a prerequisite for making the deal. So all this talk that you're hearing is that Netanyahu's presentation didn't change anything is not true. This was the assumption was not the assumption. The requirement was, the prerequisite was that Iran was going to be honest. So here is Netanyahu playing all the Iranians talking about the fact that they never had a nuclear program in the first place.
You may well know that Iran's leaders repeatedly deny ever pursuing nuclear weapons. You can listen to Iran's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei.
I stress that the Islamic Republic has never been after nuclear weapons.
You can listen to Iran's President, Hassan Rouhani.
Nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction have no place in Iran's security and defense doctrine and contradict our fundamental religious and ethical convictions.
This is repeated by Iran's Foreign Minister, Javad Zarif.
We didn't have any program to develop nuclear weapons. Anyway, we consider nuclear weapons both irrational as well as immoral.
Well, tonight I'm here to tell you one thing. Iran lied.
So he has these guys who are still going on television, by the way, and now they're insulting Netanyahu. They're saying, oh, he's just putting on this dog and pony show. But here's how they got this dog and pony show. Crazy Jews. When these guys, Israel put the crazy into crazy Jews. Crazy Jews went into Iran. They got a mole into Iran and stole their nuclear records. They had this, here's Netanyahu showing you this little warehouse where they stored the nuclear weapons.
Now, from the outside, this was an innocent-looking compound. It looks like a dilapidated warehouse. But from the inside, it contained Iran's secret atomic archives locked in massive files. Actually, they're a little bigger than this, okay? A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained 0.5 ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages. Another 55,000 files on 183 CDs.
Great stuff. I mean, he's just doing this to poke the Iranians in the nose, man. He's just saying to them, because meanwhile, Israel is like bombing Syria. Nobody will admit that it's them, but they're obviously fighting all these guys. And by the way, a lot of the other players in the Middle East, the Saudis, they don't want Iran taking over the place either. So they're kind of standing back. So they go in and they steal this stuff. We don't know how they got it. They obviously had a mole in the operation. An amazing intelligence achievement. The U.S. has looked at all these records, says they're real. And Netanyahu just comes up with these 4 conclusions, one of which is really important. So listen to what he says.
First, Iran lied about never having a nuclear weapons program. 100,000 secret files prove that they lied. Second, even after the deal, Iran continued to preserve and expand its nuclear weapons know-how for future use. Why would a terrorist regime hide and meticulously catalog its secret nuclear files if not to use them at a later date? Third, Iran lied again in 2015 when it didn't come clean to the IAEA as required by the nuclear deal. And finally, the Iran deal, the nuclear deal, is based on lies. It's based on Iranian lies and Iranian deception. 100,000 files right here prove that they lied.
So the question that he asks, why would they keep all these records if they're not planning to continue to do this? That's the big question, because what the people who defend this deal keep saying is, no, we've got inspections. I mean, they can inspect the sites that they were using to build nuclear weapons at the time. They don't let them inspect all their military sites, and who knows where they've moved their operations. James Mattis, who I trust, I believe he's a good guy. He came out and he said, oh yeah, we can inspect this stuff. We can really look at it. It's a very robust program. But Netanyahu's right. Why are they keeping these records? Everything they did was based on a lie, and not just their lies, Obama's lies as well. That is the other thing, and that's the thing that the press has to cover up, because they don't want to admit that Obama sold them a bill of goods. And they said that. Ben Rhodes said, these guys didn't know anything, the press didn't know anything, we sold them a bill of goods, we created an echo chamber. Now, I just want you to think for a minute about the things that they attack Trump for. The two things they attack Trump for is being mean and being dishonest. He lies. The New York Times says this every day. He lies. They use that word lie. They never use that about Obama. They didn't use it about other presidents. But with Trump, it's that he lies and that he's mean. Now, listen, Barack Obama had more elegance than Donald Trump. There's no question about it. But listen to the things he did to sell this deal. He wanted this deal so badly. And a lot of people think he wanted it just because he hated Israel so much. The GOP. Now, remember, this thing has never been ratified. This is not a treaty. This has never been ratified by the Senate. He didn't take it to the Senate because he knew it would lose. The GOP sent a letter saying, we don't like this deal. Here is Obama. Now, he doesn't talk like Donald Trump. He doesn't have the gruff voice of Donald Trump. But listen to what he says about the GOP.
I think it's somewhat ironic to see some members of Congress wanting to make common cause with the hardliners in Iran. It's an unusual coalition. I think what we're going to focus on right now is actually seeing whether we can get a deal or not. And once we do, then if we do, then we'll be able to make the case to the American people, and I'm confident we'll be able to implement it.
So they accused the Republicans of making common cause with the hardliners in Iran. So in other words, the Republicans were terrorists. Now, what would happen? Just imagine if Donald Trump came out and said, the Democrats are terrorists. The Democrats are just... everybody would say how nasty that was, including me. But Barack Obama, used a stiletto instead of a sledgehammer, and he slipped in the knife, and nobody says anything. Now, the press didn't go after him at all for this. Then when Jewish groups started opposing this, he went around making speeches, and he went on Jon Stewart's show, The Daily Show, and he said, well, we've got to do this instead, in spite of the lobbyists. He said this when Chuck Schumer, who is Jewish, came out and opposed the deal. He said, we got to go around the lobbyists. Well, which lobbyists? Who was he talking about? He was talking about the Jews. The Jewish lobby is one of the phrases that anti-Semites use whenever Israel stands up for its own, or whenever Jews take on an issue that they think is important to them. So suddenly the lobbyists were the bad. That was the key phrase. It was what the left calls a dog whistle. He was anti-Semitic. He was the stuff he said about the Republicans was absolutely absurd, and then he lied. Part of this deal was to release 14 people who were being held, 14 Iranians who were being held. And he went on TV and he said, we're releasing 14 civilians. He said, we are releasing 14 civilians. These 14 civilians, one of them was a top Hezbollah operative who had not only been indicted in U.S. courts for planning to kill U.S. government employees, but whom agents believed reported to Putin as a key supplier of weapons to Syria and Iraq. I'm reading this out of the Federalist. Another was serving an 8-year sentence for conspiring to supply Iran with satellite technology and hardware. Another was charged with illegally conspiring to procure thousands of parts with nuclear applications. So these weren't civilians. He lied about that. And then did he lie about the money, right? Because remember, the Iranians released some hostages, including the guy from the Washington Post, a reporter named Jason Rezaian. And Obama said, and they delivered, remember those platters of money, and it was all kind of cash from different places. And then Obama said this:
"We do not pay ransom for hostages." We've got a number of Americans being held all around the world, and I meet with their families, and it is heartbreaking. And we have stood up an entire section of interagency experts who devote all their time to working with these families to get these Americans out. But those families know that we have a policy that we don't pay ransom. And the notion that we would somehow start now in this high-profile way and announce it to the world, even as we're looking into the faces of other hostage families whose loved ones are being held hostage, and say to them that we don't pay ransom, defies logic.
Their argument was that we owed the Iranians money because we had frozen some of their assets during the hostage crisis, and The Hague had said, you owe them this money, and we just happened to pay it back at the same time as these people were released. It just happened. But they did say that the release of the people, the State Department said the release of the people was contingent on the delivery of this money. That's a ransom. That is a ransom. When you pay money to somebody, when a release of hostages is contingent on a payment, that's a ransom. So whatever, and Obama's emotionalist appeal there was just dishonest. The whole thing was dishonest. And we didn't get anything. Iran was already a signatory of the non-proliferation agreement. They weren't supposed to be doing what they were doing in the first place. So we didn't get anything. And what we did do is we took the sanctions off. We'll never get those sanctions back on them again. We'll never get the Europeans in line to put those sanctions back on them again. And it was a disaster. So you can say, well, don't pull out of the deal because it's going to be even worse. But that's like saying, you gave in to the mafia, but if you pull out of the mafia is going to come and burn your restaurant. It's not really, doesn't make it a good deal. And I just want to show you, I have to show you the press protecting Obama's legacy in this crappy deal that he sold us through lies. He sold it through lies, and Iran sold it through lies. You got to see this. Chris Cuomo has Netanyahu. Netanyahu now makes the rounds after his big dog and pony show. He makes the rounds of the news shows. Chris Cuomo goes for the moral equivalence of Iran having weapons, a secret nuclear plan, and Israel, a free country, whether they have weapons or not. Listen to this interview.
An open question, and it has very lethal implications. That's something that we'll have to see how it develops. The idea of disclosure. Iran won't tell the truth. We had to go in there, is Israel's position, and steal this information so we can know the truth. Disclosure as an issue should work every way. The United States should say what it has. You know where I'm going with this. A yes-no question for you. Does Israel have nuclear capabilities and nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
We've always said that we won't be the first to introduce it, so we haven't introduced it.
But that's not an answer to the question. Do you have them or do you not?
Of any country. It's as good an answer as you're going to get. But I'll tell you one thing, Chris, and I think it's important. Iran signed NPT. Iran signed all sorts of commitments. Iran said that they don't have this nuclear weapons program. And Iran calls daily for the annihilation of my country.
Absolutely.
We don't do that.
We understand that there is an existential threat from Iran and others. We understand that Iran is known for lying on this issue. That's one of the big motivating factors for the deal in 2015, as it was explained to us. But what I'm saying is, if disclosure matters so much, what message does it send when you won't confirm something that is widely believed by the entire international community?
I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says. Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
Chris Cuomo, I'm sorry, but you watch Cuomo and it's like he's making a moral equivalence between Israel, our ally, a free state who threatens nobody, and Iran, who has continually called for Israel to be wiped off the map. And there's somehow because he calls for Iran to put forward their nuclear plans, Israel should put forward, and Chuck Todd did exactly the same thing. He was interviewing Senator, who did he have? Roy Blunt, I think it was. And he says, well, we can deal with, North Korea. Why are we being so nice to North Korea? I mean, it's insane. Listen to this.
Sometimes it's weird how we're treating Kim Jong-un versus how we treat the Iranians. Kim Jong-un essentially murdered an American citizen in Otto Warmbier. It's very possible. The way he was treated over there, he was essentially murdered.
Plus probably his own brother and his uncle.
Has murdered other people. He has starved his own people. The Iranians don't starve their own people. It is, and yet we're sort of now feeling comfortable cozying up with Kim Jong-un and demonizing the Iranians. It just feels like we're sending some odd messages around the world.
Well, I don't know, Chuck. I think you want to be sure you learn the lesson of North Korea, which is don't let countries that have bad inclinations all over the world wind up with nuclear weapons. We are with Iran right now where we would have been with North Korea 15 years ago, and it's foolish to let Iran become another North Korea. And we're not dealing with Kim Jong-un because we think he's a good guy.
I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says. Like dumb. I'm smart, and I want respect.
They're all Fredo. Their entire news, the entire American journalistic community, they're all Fredo. Fredo runs from one station to another, dressing up as different newsmen. They are just protecting Obama's legacy. Why? Because leftism is racism, because they elevated Obama above what he was and above what he could do, above his record before he took office and his record after he took office, and now they're trying to protect themselves from the absolutely true charge that they blew their profession for 8 years and now have lost the respect of the people. And, this thing is a dangerous deal. This thing with Iran is a dangerous deal. And to protect it in order to protect the press's reputation is absurd.